So to begin with, just give yourself a few moments standing in this basic posture. Shuffle around a bit, feel as though you're just able to settle in. On the side, weight a little bit forward. This is exaggerated. Your hips just dropping back. So you're sitting into your legs with the comparable feeling that when we sit into a chair or something like that, there's just releasing, feeling the support through your feet and your legs, through your skeleton, so that you gradually lose the sort of sense that you have to strain to hold yourself on. And just have a sense for how this posture feels, and you may want to just apply some kind of label to it. For me, spaciousness is a good term, not the only one, but it's for you to find that, so that the label becomes the feeling that your intent is aiming for. And this feeling is something that we want to try and maintain through all of the session. It's quite challenging with some of the exercises that we're doing. So you won't keep it all the time, but sometimes coming back to it, you think, oh, I've got the foot in the wrong place or something like that. Other times it just doesn't feel right. And yeah, I want to feel that spaciousness. And as you get more used to that, so you're more likely to be able to find a way into it. And then begin to turn in the center of your body, noticing how things change as you start to move. You might want to think about how we're moving. That awareness of what I described as a skeleton, but that whole inner area of your body will help you develop an ability to move from that. If you think about a bicycle wheel, for instance, then the chain attaches to the hub, the inside or the middle of the wheel, and it moves the middle of the wheel. It doesn't. You don't try and move the spokes if you see what I mean. In Tai Chi, in this exercise particularly, the main position you're going to, main part of the body you're going to move from is that central part of your body between hips and waist, supported by your feet and your legs. And of course, in many of the exercises, when we do move the weight, then that is also a key factor. So really, you could think of moving from the inner regions of your body, moving from the center of your body, and just expanding your idea of the center. So it includes the physical center of your body, but it extends down to your feet. So it's almost like if you could imagine sitting on a ball, and you're supported by the ball, but your feet are on the ground, of course, and everything comes into creating the space within that central part of the body to actually. Arms are quite heavy, hanging from your shoulders, swinging from your shoulders. So there's a sort of involuntary movement in your arms. You're not trying to move your arms, but it would be quite hard work. Well, I could do like this, but now I'm having to tense my muscles. And as I do this, to see if you notice any kind of connection with what's happening in your chest, your upper back, maybe other parts of your body. Let's try and start with chest and upper back. Another element to be aware of is the sense of rhythm of the movement, which will settle into a rhythm, or you want to settle into a rhythm which your body seems to resonate. One of the things sometimes said in modern dance is that everybody has their own sort of rhythm that will resonate. And it's sometimes people talk about finding that rhythm, but it seems to me more like a process of just allowing that rhythm to come through. We don't get in the way of things. So if we're not holding, say, our back tight or something like that, if we're moving with a nice steady movement in the centre of our body, then that resonance will start to happen. Nose in your arm. That idea of a resonance, that if you get a guitar and you'll just gently touch or you'll pluck a string at one end, the vibration will travel all the way up the string, unless something's getting in the way. And so, vibration is one way of understanding the notion of energy. So the rhythm, the connection that comes with it, is one way we can have this experience of the sort of energy involved in the movements that we're making. Your hands drop down, 1 foot forwards. So now, a little bit more tricky, really, our bodies naturally move, don't they, as a rule? Unless you've got some kind of condition, situation, which is preventing that. But it's very easy to get too focused on one particular thing. And it's very easy to get focused on the arms, and we definitely don't want that to happen. It's easy to stand there doing this, turning but not moving the weight, or alternatively moving the weight but not really turning. Remember that your body will naturally turn to face the direction that your feet are pointing. So, for instance, I'm standing here, and I'm trying to talk to you like this. I'm twisting up my back. If I wanted to turn around, I'd generally turn around. And so, again, this is something that is perfectly natural for human beings. It's just that we're trying to do it consciously and deliberately, intentionally. And so it's taking one of those things that is fairly automatic for us as human beings and actually making it a bit more difficult, because when we start to think about something, it becomes more difficult. On the other side. So it's like, if you tied your shoes up half an hour ago, you probably did it while you were chatting to somebody or listening to the radio or thinking about something different. But I said to you, so how did you tie your shoelaces up? You'd probably go, how did I do this? You'd have to really sort of stop and think about it. So in terms of the mind, one of the key things to do is to generate a quality of observation. It's not the only thing, but just to be able to sit quietly with that observation. And to keep that sort of sense of stillness when we do become more intentful, when we do try and change things. It's never abrupt and always has this quality of watching, observing behind it. Okay. So it's often called a warm-up. Certainly, mobilizing the body in one way or another is a part of it. But there's many other things going on in those preparatory exercises that we can just review as we get ready for this session. Back to the Wu Chi stance, sinking down, hips dropping back, and pushing up again. Slightly exaggerated. What I want to do is to let this part of my body drop back. And the problem is that if I do this, I'm going to fall over. So what I want to try and do is, as I start to sink down, you can see I'm being pulled backwards. the adjustment that we make is to release in hips and lower back, releasing our belly, sides, so that our pelvis has room to, again, exaggerate, just gently tuck under. From there and closer. From there to there. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not thinking, oh, I've got to move 2 centimeters or something like that, because again, it's too subtle a movement, and also one that we don't need to tell the body how to do it. We just need to stop getting in the way. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. Let that movement in your legs and your hips move the ball forward, expanding and contracting. Once again, that rhythm, trying to make the 2 parts of the rhythm, the expansion and the contraction, even in length and time as much as possible. Quite often that would mean putting a little bit more emphasis on the yielding movement, the movement that allows you to settle in to the floor. And movement downwards, the key thing is to really try and get that sense of your center of gravity drop in the root. Hence the exercise is called rooting down. The root is the root of the movement, just as the root of the tree is the root, is the sort of, I suppose you could say it's the most important part, in the sense that if there isn't a root, there isn't going to be a tree. Not that the other stuff isn't important, but it's built up on in many different ways from that root. If nothing else, the ability to drop your center of gravity, which is another way of describing the process of rooting down, to release your body, to let gravity work through your body, gives us the stability that is really one of the key benefits of Tai Chi. Now, let your hands come down and out to your sides. And then parting the clouds. Tracing the circle with your fingertips. Going back to the first of these, do these 3 movements as a little sequence. Don't rush the change over. And in fact, the point of change from one movement to another is really a good thing to focus on. Our legs and the hips are doing the same thing, but from hips up to the fingers, there's quite variations in the imagery, in the pattern that our arms are describing, and in the reflection of those patterns within our body. To start off with, we're always going to be looking at the movement, thinking, oh, he's doing that with his arms, I've got to do the same thing. So we copy the external movement, if you like, the choreography. But as we become familiar with the movements, it may be that the imagery is the key, or an awareness of how how the movement we're about to do feels within our body. We're back to that more intuitive sense. And these are things that come out of long-term practice, regular practice in Tai Chi. One more round of this. Take your time. There's often a temptation when we know that we're going to change to rush at the end. No need for that. So listen your arms, drop down, feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders, and then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Elbow being pushed up, fingers following, and then drawing down. All the way down, your fingers open, change sides. And draw down. Rush movement from one side of your body to another. We recognize that there is often a tendency to do that. You know, if you've got a busy week coming up, part of your mind, part of your attention will already be sort of rushing ahead, as it were. Just recognize that and switch your attention to your feet and the expansion and contraction in your body, or whatever other elements are available to you in the movement, just to sort of break that cycle of feeling that you have to rush. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Let's do one more on each side. Begin to finish this, just let your hips begin to settle back again. Try and stay in that position as you bring your hands to your sides. The first and the last part of this, first of all. Hands going just a little bit above your head. And then down all the way back to the starting point, and then pushing out and back. From the side, notice that as I push up, my hand is still slightly in front of my head. I haven't pulled back. And as I push out, same thing. Where my hands are, my little finger sort of in line with my ear rather than my tongue. This helps to keep this broader feeling, supportive feeling across our back, and subsequent sort of release in the front of our body, a release of tightness and stiffness. And this time, as you push out to the side again, turning in your hips and back. And the other way, take your time. Notice again that there's often a tendency to rush, to miss out, or to shortcut this returning stage. But remember that rhythm. Both sides of the rhythm are important. The expanding yang element, contracting yin element of equal value. And in fact, they mutually support each other. Part of the feeling of the movement might be that, if you were to get a balloon, especially a balloon or a ball which isn't fully inflated, and if you squeezed it in, you'd get to a point where it started to push your hands back out, and your hands would go back out, and then you squeeze it in again. Yin becomes yang, yang becomes yin. Just as night changes to day, and so on and so forth. One more round of this. And when it contracts in, let your hands drop down with the next expansive movement, pushing your arm up. You're going slightly in front and in line with your nose, straight down the midline of your body. And if that's comfortable for you, you can do so without straining. Just turn a little. And again, just notice, the change, even from this part of the exercise to the turn if you're doing it, changing patterns within your body, different muscles you use, not just muscles, but you could start with just an awareness of the big muscles. What are they doing? And then change sides. And then, if it's comfortable, add in the turn. Remember, the idea is not to restrict that space within your body. One more round. And then just stand for one. Shake out. Just have a little think about your posture again and how your posture is aligned before we go into the next couple of exercises within this stance, because it's actually quite subtle what we're doing. Let me show you something. If I just grab a handful of books, they'll probably all fall out. Okay, so I've got some books here. Yeah, so if I hold them level like this, it's fine. If I tilt the bottom one, they all start to fall out. If I take the second one, they're going to fall on the floor in a minute, aren't they? If I say take the second one up from the bottom, then everything above that will start to fall, and so on and so forth. So we take our measure, we take our, if you like, orientation with the pull of gravity from the ground, which presumably where your training is that. It's an interesting experiment to try doing this when it's a bit wobbly. Up through the body, through knees, through hips and pelvis, shoulders, and so on. One of the key areas here is hips and pelvis, because there's this kind of movement there. We can't really sort of lift our knee up a bit more or whatever. That's a fairly set thing, unless somehow we can make our one calf grow more. But of course, we can't do that. So the first part of the body where there could be any change to our alignment is going to be the center part of the body. So just as when we do, say, pushing in 4 directions here, this is the horizontal rotation here. You remember when I was talking about the initial stance, this, as my hips go back, this is a vertical rotation. I'm exaggerating, but this is a vertical rotation on the part of my pelvis. And if I get a pole and show you this, so imagine it's like the center line, or if you like, so the line from hips and shoulders. If I go up and down like this, then everything above my hips is more likely to stay level. It's not a sort of guarantee, but if my pelvis is sort of thrown out, then nothing's going to work on the top. So I have to think about this. The next couple of movements deliberately change that, because what happens is my hips go back, and you can see now the top of the pole, which is where my head would be, has gone forward slightly, and then to bring my head back up, I don't strain like this. It's going to damage my back in the long run, but rather I let myself settle back here. So it's my hips coming up that draw me up. And in the second exercise, polishing the table, when we come to it, we combine these things. We turn, we push back, take a chunk out the wall, we turn, we sink down. We turn, and if you think about it, those of you who already know the exercise, you'll see actually the top of the pole is doing more or less what I would require my hands to do. So be careful with your knees and your back. They're both quite strong movements, but they both illustrate a really important element in our posture, which is our ability to come to the upright position using gravity rather than fighting against gravity. We use the pull of gravity on our hips to help to bring the upper part of our body upright. If I have this and I've got this, and maybe it's a bit uneven there. If I got a weight and put it on this end, or kind of hung a bag with some shopping in from this end, the pole would do that. And it wouldn't, not because I've done anything with my hand particularly, but simply it's like a set of kitchen scales. So the first one is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Sink down. As you push up, let your arms follow you. Nice and relaxed in the shoulders, hips going back, dropping down, and then let your hands drop, feel your hips dropping back to come to this position and push up. Doesn't have to be a big movement, I'm exaggerating slightly. So if either of those two things, the stack of books and or the pole, made sense to you, they become part of this overall sense of knowing what we're trying to do, of intention in our movements. One more time. And then polishing the table. So you turn, push your hips back, let your arms extend. And one more time. So those are useful exercises because they start to show us how we can stop arguing, stop getting into a fight with gravity, this overwhelming force that if we're constantly straining against it, then we're constantly strained because gravity is a constant. Few of us will ever really be properly in zero gravity. The closest we might come to it is when we're in water. But when we're in water, of course, if you're saying in the sea, you'll tend to move with the forces of the water, the waves and the currents, and so on and so forth. So the principle is the same. It's a principle that we've taken from the martial aspect of Tai Chi, not meeting force with force. I'm going to take straight into the bow stance. I'm going to come back to the parallel stance probably later. Turn one foot out and step forwards. Keep the width of the step and step about the same in length and begin to transfer your weight. Now, again, I'm keep doing this. I'm just going to use the stack of books again. Always handy. So the stack of books is in my way. I think, well, I ought to get rid of it, and I try and move it. And what I do is this, and I think, oh, that's no good, because this started to fall over, and the books haven't moved, and so on and so forth. So I think if I do this, yeah, I can move it over here, fairly safe. Just get rid of them like that. So same with our body. If we imagine these series of however you want to think of it, books, platforms, and you want to maintain the alignment of your body, then the thing you have to develop is the ability to move from the ground, to initiate movement through your feet and your hips, your legs. So in the previous set of exercises, we were sinking down and pushing up. We still need to sink in this supporting leg, but the push up is translated or transformed, redirected into a horizontal movement. But we take a moment just to settle in each foot, and you can just get into the habit of checking that posture. Again, this is a useful habit to begin to develop because it's one of the things that will spill over quite naturally into our daily lives. This awareness of posture, this awareness when we lose good posture, when we're getting into a struggle with the pull of gravity, when we're tightening up, we'll actually start to just sort of surface at different times. Because we sort of hardwire the mechanism of that awareness, which means that the principle of posture that we learn in the exercises gradually make themselves felt in other circumstances. And then sinking your weight back, and this time raise your toes. Now, think about how this is happening here. You raise your back heel. So it's heel and toes. Our shoulders have no role, no direct role here. So we're not doing this and this. We keep that awareness. Remember I said earlier, process of observation. So one of the things we're observing is, are we maintaining this upright position, hips dropping back and so on and so forth? Do we still have that spacious quality, or however we label it, within our body? And we begin to associate the beginning of the movement of our feet with a dropping of the hips. When I get to here, I let my hip drop, it pushes my knee forwards, that raises my hip, my back heel. More of my weight goes into my front foot. When I go back, it's like if I drop the hip here, that helps the toes to go. You can have the toes slightly turned out. And then I go forwards. So gradually, through this willingness and ability to allow our hips to release and to get a feeling of dropping a little bit more, we begin to transmit a process of change and energy to our legs and our feet. And then this time, contract the back leg. So you pulls your foot in, just have your toes down, take a moment and have you filtered off. Every time we move, our posture will change. Step back, put the ball of your foot down, lower your heel, move your weight back, raise your toes, contract the front leg, draw your foot in, and then step out. This time, put your heel down. When you've done it a few times like this, remembering that support comes from the ground, from your root, from dropping your center of gravity, from your skeleton. Not by, it doesn't come from straining your shoulders or your back or your neck, not having your arms rigid. And if it feels comfortable, only if it feels comfortable, from here, you can raise your knee. Similarly, what I was just saying about hips dropping, what we're really doing here is contracting the leg and pulling our knee up. And to pull our knee up, it's not a strain in my hip or a lifting of my hip, it's a rotation of my hip. I don't want to get to here and then do this, because now I'm already losing that alignment. Okay. And then change over, give your legs a little shake. And once again, feet hip width apart, about the same in length, back foot turned out, front foot pointing straight ahead, and transferring your weight. When we do it in this fixed step, as we would refer to it, because the feet aren't moving away from their position, when we go forward, we get about 60% of our weight, or up to 60% of our weight in the front leg. When we go back, it's up to 70. A key thing here is to make sure that you're not tightening your knee. As soon as you do that, what happens is the knee clenches and it stops that movement of your weight downwards and causes a great strain on the knee. To increase how much weight is moving, that's when we start to raise toes and heel. Remember, if you are feeling a bit kind of uncertain about this, but even if you're not and want to investigate this a little bit more, then doing this with a little bit of support from something, I just got my hand lightly against the wall, because one of the things I'm trying to do is effectively to relax. Relax isn't quite the right word, but to release, to allow more of my weight to sink down. That's not going to happen if I stiffen up. But it's counterintuitive if we feel a bit uncertain to soften. Now, I've made a mistake then. I went a little bit too far. I trained my response to be one of, I got to hear it was a bit wobbly, wasn't really paying attention because I was talking about something to you all. So we, again, start to do this quite intuitively. And again, this is something that is obviously of great value in our daily lives. If we can train our response to be a little bit out of line, a little bit wobbly, to settle down rather than to stiffen up, we get an increased stability. Bringing the foot in, take your time. There's a temptation just to say, oh, I can do this, but regardless of how long you've been doing Tai Chi, there's always something interesting. Well, not always. There's often interesting things get thrown up, and so try not to think, oh, it's this, I can do this, I can sort of like think about my shopping list for this evening, or whatever. And bring the foot in, whichever direction you have space in. We'll take a few steps. If you haven't done so already, you can change direction. I've pretty much run out of space, as you can see. Notice the pattern that my foot makes, coming in, back, and out. So it traces a semicircle. Try and keep the width of my step. If I don't do that, when I get to here, I'm sort of like trying to bounce on a tightrope. It's a little bit more difficult, and I get a bit more wobbly. I'm changing direction again. We do take different stances in Tai Chi, but remember, we're trying to establish principles. Once we've begun to feel those principles working, they can be applied in different circumstances. Sometimes, not always. And again, I'm going to change direction. And shake out. So the basic walking shows us how we can begin to take this posture, standing there, not doing anything, think, oh, this is nice. And as soon as we start to move, everything goes wrong. Imagine sort of getting on a bus or a train and there's no seats, and you stand there, oh, okay, I can stand, and you stand there, and then suddenly the vehicle starts to move, and as soon as you introduce movement and change, there's an uncertainty there. And those of you more familiar with Tai Chi, we know that we can make adjustments with the pelvis and so on and so forth. But it's quite a sort of demanding transition, I think. What we do now is we bring our arms into the movement. So earlier, when we were doing this, I said try not to just sort of like focus on your arms or one part of your body. It's a whole body movement. And there's a very distinctive feel in my reckoning to Tai Chi when we have that whole body feel. When it goes, there's an indication that we're starting to lose our posture. And again, we go through the various processes of mechanically and intuitively correcting things. So trying to keep our arms relatively quiet. So have your right foot forward, mirror my movements, and here, just hold your hands here and move your weight forwards and back. Imagine that in your hands you're holding a tray of drinks. Another image might be a supermarket trolley, which are really difficult to steer. But just think about the tray of drinks. You've got a tray of drinks in your hand. There's a table there. You wouldn't just go, oh, I'm going to stick. It wouldn't be the hand. You'll be really careful to put the tray of drinks down without spilling them. So your hands are active. They're doing something. There's an intent there. But they're not doing it by themselves. You could say they start with that push from the back foot, coming through the hips, the shoulders, and maybe just your elbows being pushed forward slightly. Again, building the movement up from the ground. Now, this is a good exercise that will help to give you a sense of how our arms will feel. And it's an important exercise because we do have a natural tendency to give more attention to our arms than say to our feet. So this kind of resets the balance a little bit. And when we come to the exercises using our arms in different patterns, this is the feeling that we want to try and maintain. Yeah. Change over, do the same thing on the other side. If you're feeling sort of twitchy in your arms, everybody wants to move the arms, try just letting your elbows rest lightly against your side if that's comfortable for you. It's interesting to experiment with this and just to get a sense for how much movement, energy if you prefer, there is within our arms. Earlier I was saying feel the patterns of movement within your body. There are definite patterns of movement within our arms, even when, perhaps especially when they're not doing anything. Now, sit back and go back to the stepping and walking with the tray of drinks or pushing the supermarket trolley. Another image might be one that I rather like, so I like to cycle, is cycling, because actually we don't use our arms nearly as much as it seems that we need to begin with, to steer the bike. I'm going to change directions. Or rather, what we do is we steady the handlebars with our arms, we maintain the structure, and we let our legs move us along. We don't try and move with our arms. There's an image there that you like. Bring your feet down. Shake out. Good. So, pushing past the neck. Sit back. Remember that feeling with the arms, right foot forwards, ease forwards, and let the movement forwards swing your arms out a little bit, and then join them back. Weight moves and the hips move, shoulders move, and your arms follow until you get to the front foot, and then they swing out a little bit. And again, just aware of changes through your back and shoulders, through your chest and sides. It helps. Imagine doing this in water with that little bit of resistance and the medium around you, delaying your arms. Not in a way that makes you have to stiffen up, of course. Time as you go back for a variant on this, just turning. The hands are now coming across your body. And you can see here my arms drop down a little bit and spring up. There's a bit of a curve there. And we just extend that curve, hands coming up to no higher than our shoulders, going forwards and down, turning, making a sort of sideways figure of 8 shape. Or an X shape if you prefer, slightly curved X. Remember that feeling of carrying the tray of drinks. Okay, shake it. So same thing with your other foot forwards. Keep the width of your step. Fisherman castanet. Aware of the weight of your arms. Not in a dead way. It's very fluid quality of weight. And then turn in. This time as you go back, the hands curve up. So the speed of the movement is governed by the speed of your weight transfer. And that governs the speed of the turning of your center. And in its turn, that governs the speed that your shoulders are moving at. Now turning the front foot out. As your arms come up, let your back foot come in. Maybe raising your knee. Don't do that if it feels at all uncomfortable. It's fine to do this. You'll see me do it like this sometimes. You haven't done so already, change direction. Could be just straight back or forwards, or it could be a little bit more to the side, depending on what layout of the room you're working in. One of the great things about this particular exercise is it takes us closer to the feeling that we get in the Tai Chi forms, but not quite so demanding in terms of I've got to get the direction right. I could, for instance, go this way, think, oh, I wonder what's over here. then maybe forwards again, and then maybe back again, and so on and so forth. So we can start to play around with these things a little bit. And just shake out. It's a fairly simple pattern. I would recommend initially getting used to it in a straightforward and backwards manner, but after that, yeah, you can play around. Good. Okay, so rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck, down from shoulder and your arm. On the other side, onto your back and around your hips and legs. Light on your belly and onto the upper part of your chest. Okay. So the last exercise brings us right back to the starting point. If you think about it, there's a circular quality there. Embrace tiger, return to the mountain. You know, when we're like this and we're a little bit wobbly, what is it that helps us to come back? And again, it could be an image, it could be the pull of gravity on our hips or whatever. So as we get more used to this, we become familiar. And again, you know, it may be helpful to have those kind of key words. The sinking down and then pushing up, embrace tiger, return to mountain. Wrapping your arms around so there's the ball against your chest, wrapping the hands around the ball, drawing in, hips dropping down, and just a general sense in mind and body of settling, quietening, not in a hurry to start the cycle over again, but recognizing that the cycle will start. Remember, you squeeze the ball in, you push down on a trampoline, you sink down into water, and then you get pushed back up. But don't be in a hurry for that. The main emphasis here is on that process of return. One more time. And a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming along or watching, depending on what you're doing. And see you soon, I hope.